Lawmakers are taking steps to ban drag show performances from children. The House and Senate both filed their own bill.
Senate Bill 147 and House Bill 403 both got their first readings in their chambers this afternoon. WKYT's Phil Pendleton heard from both sides about the new proposed legislation. He brings us our top story at 6.
Supporters say they filed House Bill 402 and Senate Bill 147 simply as public protection measures.
Our joint legislation aims to protect those in society who are the most vulnerable and susceptible to the adverse effects of the adult or entertainment industry, primarily children.
It defines adult arcades, stores, or theaters, but also states that establishments cannot host a sexually explicit drag queen performance near kids. Adult businesses must stay 933 feet. That's the city's block distance away from schools, child care centers, or libraries.
And it is our responsibility as adults to protect the innocence of their minds and bodies.
Yeah, it's disappointing to see them try these drag bans again. You know, we saw the bill last year. Didn't quite go anywhere last year.
The bill would set up civil and not criminal penalties, and unlike last year's bill that went after the performers, this bill specifically would target the businesses.
Supporters say explicit drag queen performances at any place frequented by children would be a violation.
They all think we already have this as a statewide standard, and we don't. A lot of other states do. This would just bring a cohesive effort across the state of a minimum standard.
This is a way to infringe upon the freedom of speech, the right to perform of these artists who have been doing these shows. You know, drag is nothing new. It's been around for millennia.
Both bills received their first of 3 required readings on the House and Senate floors today. In Frankfort, Phil Pendleton, WKYT.
The measures also prohibit minors from entering or performing in any capacity in an adult-oriented business.